Hey guys, before we get into today's video, just a quick heads up. If you want to support me and get access to my exclusive members-only content, you can join my Patreon. I post some extra stuff there that you won't find here on YouTube. The link is in the description. Alright, let's get into the video. I was 32 the night a 4-year-old girl taught me what real power is. If you had walked into that ballroom, you would have thought I owned everything you could see, but in that moment, I realized I couldn't even control the kind of man I was becoming. Gold light poured from the chandeliers, bouncing off marble floors and crystal glasses. Violin music floated over the low murmur of rich men and their colder wives. My men lined the walls in black suits, hands folded in front, jackets heavy over the guns they were not supposed to show. I sat in the center of it all in a white suit, next to the woman everyone believed I would marry, while business partners from 3 countries raised their glasses to the future of the Romano family. Valeria leaned toward me, her perfume sharp and sweet. "Your maid is clumsy," she whispered, her red lips barely moving. I followed her eyes. A young woman in a black and white uniform knelt on the floor, frantically wiping champagne from the polished marble. Her hands shook so much the cloth slipped from her fingers. A full tray lay upside down near her, glasses shattered like ice around her knees. My men pretended not to look, but I felt the tension in the room shift, as if every crystal in the chandeliers was suddenly listening. I knew that maid. Her name was Anna. 2 months ago she came to my door with a sleeping child in her arms and fear in her eyes, asking for work. She had no papers, no family here, nothing but the way she held her daughter, tight like the world was always trying to steal her. I hired her on the spot, told the staff manager to say nothing, and pretended I had done it only because I needed more help in the kitchen. In truth, it was the first kind thing I had done in a long time that had nothing to do with power. "Stand up," Valeria said, her voice slicing through the music. The violins hesitated for half a second, then kept playing softer now, like they were afraid too. Anna rose slowly, keeping her eyes on the floor. A line of blood ran over her knee where the glass had cut her. I watched her shoulders rise and fall as she tried to breathe without showing it. I recognized that type of breathing. I had seen it in my mother's chest the nights my father came home angry. Valeria's red dress glittered when she stepped forward. "Do you have any idea how much that bottle costs?" she asked, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. People turned their heads, relief on their faces. It wasn't them in the center of the room tonight. "Do you know whose celebration this is?" She lifted Anna's chin with 2 fingers, forcing her to look up. "You spill anything that has my name on it again and you will never work in this city. Do you understand?" Anna's lips parted. For a second I thought she might actually ask for mercy. Instead, she swallowed it. "Yes, Signorina," she whispered. Her eyes flicked to me just once, not begging, just hoping I was still the man who had told her on that first day, "No one touches my staff without going through me." I said nothing. Silence is a habit in my family. You learn early that feelings are dangerous, that mercy is expensive. You keep your face calm while men scream, while deals are made that will ruin lives you will never see. You watch, you calculate, you survive. I had been doing it since I was 12. But I wasn't the only one watching. From behind one of the marble columns, a tiny head with messy curls peeked out. Big brown eyes, round and furious, locked on Valeria's hand still digging into Anna's chin. I felt my chest tighten. I had told the staff to keep the child upstairs tonight, far from this world. I had even told the guards to let her keep her ragged teddy bear so she would cry less. And still, somehow, the little girl had found her way here, into the lion's cage, dressed like a palace. Before I could move, the girl burst from behind the column. Her little shoes slapped against the marble as she ran to her mother. The entire hall seemed to exhale in shock. Conversations died mid-sentence. The violins cracked off one wrong note and stopped completely. My men shifted, hands twitching toward their jackets out of pure reflex. A child running toward the center of power is never a safe thing in my world. "Leah, no," Anna gasped, reaching out, but it was too late. The girl planted herself between Valeria and her mother like a tiny soldier. Her face was red, eyes shining with tears that hadn't yet fallen. She lifted her chin, just like Valeria had done to Anna, and pointed her small finger straight at my fiancé's chest. "You can't boss my mom around," she shouted, her voice echoing off the gold and marble. "You mean she's not your servant, she's my mom." For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Even the chandeliers seemed to stop trembling. Valeria's eyes widened, then narrowed into a smile so cold it could cut glass. "Where did this little animal come from?" she hissed. She looked over the girl's head, straight at me. "Matteo, is this what loyalty looks like in your house now? Maids and their brats talking back to me." Every gaze in the room slid to my face. My men, my father's oldest associate sitting near the bar, swirling his whiskey. The foreign partners measuring me, judging how I would handle disrespect in my own home. I was used to their eyes. I was used to being studied like a weapon, but I was not used to feeling ashamed while they watched. The little girl turned then, for the first time really seeing me. Our eyes met. It hit me like a punch, the same fearless stare I had once seen in a mirror years ago before this life taught me to look down. She didn't know who I was, not really. To her, I was just a man in a white suit sitting there while her mother bled on the floor. "You're the boss here, right?" she said, still pointing, but now her hand trembled. "So why are you letting her make my mom cry?" The question slid under my ribs like a knife. I felt my throat close. In one quick flash, I saw another woman crying in another expensive room. My mother on the night my father broke a glass against the wall and told her, "In this house I am the law." I was 14. I had stood in the doorway, fists clenched, and done nothing. I pushed myself up, the chair scraping loudly. The room moved with me, guards straightened, guests leaned back, the air itself holding its breath. I stepped down from the small platform and walked toward the girl, toward the maid, toward the anger in Valeria's eyes. Up close, Leah was even smaller. A smear of chocolate marked her cheek like she had snuck dessert before wandering downstairs. Her dress was simple, already wrinkled. She looked up at me without flinching. No one had looked at me like that in years, not my men, not my enemies, not even my own father. There was no calculation in her gaze, no fear of who I was supposed to be. Only one clear demand: do something. I went down on one knee so we were at the same height. The marble was cold through the fabric of my suit, and I could feel the eyes burning into the back of my neck. My hand twitched, wanting to reach out, to wipe the chocolate from her face, to do something human and simple, but my voice came out instead. "What's your name?" I asked quietly. She sniffed, stubborn. "Leah." "Leah," I repeated, like I needed to remember it for the rest of my life. "Do you know who all these people are?" She glanced around, then back at me. "They're scared of you," she said, "but I'm not." Somewhere behind us, someone gave a soft, nervous laugh and quickly covered it with a cough. Valeria's heels clicked closer. "Enough of this," she snapped. "Matteo, either you show them who you are or I will. Security." Her voice cracked like a whip. One of my men stepped forward immediately, broad shoulders cutting through the circle of guests. His eyes never left my face, but his hand moved toward Anna's arm. The message was clear: remove the problem, the maid, the child, make the scene go away so the music can start again and the deals can continue. Anna let out a broken sound, half sob, half prayer, and grabbed her daughter's shoulders. "Please, signore," she whispered, looking up at me with those same terrified eyes from the day she arrived. "She's just a child. I will pay for the bottle. I will." "Matteo," Valeria said, each syllable heavy with warning, "your guests are watching. Are you really going to let this disrespect stand?" Leah twisted in her mother's hands and looked straight at the approaching guard. "Don't touch my mom," she said, her little voice shaking but still loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're all cowards if you listen to her." The guard hesitated, caught between the order he had heard and the one he hadn't yet received. In that fragile second, with the whole room balancing on the edge of a decision, I felt something inside me crack, like an old bone that had healed wrong. Every rule I'd been raised with screamed at me to protect my reputation, to remind everyone who held the power here. But all I could see was a 4-year-old girl standing on the same line I had refused to cross as a boy. My father's oldest associate lifted his glass at me, his eyes cold, as if to say, "Show us, boy, be what we made you." Leah looked up at me one more time, hope and fear fighting in her eyes. And in that moment, with my next word ready to decide the fate of a maid and her daughter, I realized I had no idea which man I was about to be. My mouth was dry, but my voice came out steady. "Luca," I said without looking away from Leah, "if you take one more step toward them, you answer to me, not to anyone else, me." The guard froze, a visible shiver went through the room. I did not raise my tone, I did not curse, I did not threaten. In our world, real danger never has to shout. I stood slowly and placed my hand on Leah's small shoulder. She was still breathing fast, ready to fight everyone twice her size. Behind her, Anna trembled, one hand pressed to the cut on her knee, the other wrapped around her daughter's arm like a last defense. "In my house," I said, turning so my words reached every table, "we do not threaten children. We do not humiliate the people who serve us. Not for a bottle, not for anything." It was a declaration, but it was also a test. Who would look down? Who would meet my eyes? Who would remember later that I had chosen mercy in public? Valeria's laugh sliced the silence. It was high and sharp, like glass about to break. "So this is who you are now," she said, The great Matteo Romano, lecturing about kindness in front of criminals and politicians. She stepped closer, her red dress catching every light in the room. You think they respect that? They will eat you alive. She turned to our guests, lifting her glass with a smile that did not touch her eyes. Forgive him, my future husband forgets that power must be seen to be real. This maid, she flicked her fingers at Anna, will be punished properly, and the child will learn her place. Leah bristled, about to snap again. I squeezed her shoulder gently. Enough, I said. The word was for everyone. Valeria, I continued, looking straight at her, you are a guest in my home, and for your sake I will pretend I did not hear you threaten a 4-year-old child. Her face changed. The room felt it, the small shift from annoyance to danger. Matteo, she said softly now, your father agreed to our engagement. My family controls half the port. Do you really want to embarrass me like this in front of everyone? I stepped around Leah and Anna and closed the distance between us, stopping just short of touching her. The scent of her perfume wrapped around me like smoke. I am not embarrassing you, I replied. You did that yourself when you laid hands on someone under my protection. A sharp murmur moved through the room. The phrase was deliberate. Everyone heard it, under my protection. That meant something in our world. It was a shield and a declaration of war if someone tried to break it. Valeria's eyes flashed. For a second, I saw the girl she might have been before they turned her into a weapon like me, hurt, furious, terrified of losing control. Are you calling off our engagement? She asked, voice low. People stopped pretending not to listen now. Some even stood up to see better. Alliances were built on words like these. Fortunes rose and fell on public humiliation. I thought of the promises my father had made to her father, the cargo we moved through their docks, the politicians they owned that now also protected me, the years of planning, the quiet assumption that one day Valeria and I would stand together at an altar, smiling with our teeth, calculating behind our eyes. Then I looked back at Anna, bleeding quietly on my perfect floor, and at Leah, small and fierce, trembling with rage and fear and love that did not know how to be quiet. I said, I am. The word left my mouth and everything shifted. A glass slipped from someone's hand in the back and shattered. No one turned. Luca's jaw tightened. The violinist, not knowing what else to do, set his instrument down on the chair beside him, hands shaking. Valeria's smile died completely. For the first time that night she looked young, almost vulnerable. Then the gates closed again behind her eyes. You will regret this, she whispered. My father will talk to me, not to you. My tone hardened. You want to walk out of here with your pride, Valeria? I suggest you do it now, before I forget that once I tried to respect you. For a long, unbearable moment, no one knew what she would do. She could scream, order her men to draw their guns, make a scene that would stain the floor in more than champagne. Instead, she lifted her chin, adjusted the strap of her shimmering dress, and smiled that cold, rehearsed smile again. To our gracious host, she said loudly, raising her glass one last time, may he enjoy his pets while he can. She drank, set the glass on the nearest table, and walked out of the ballroom without another word. Her bodyguards peeled off the walls and followed. The doors thudded shut behind them. The silence she left behind was heavier than any music. I felt every gaze on my back as I turned to Anna. Her eyes were wide, terrified, not of Valeria now, but of what I had just done. Signore, she whispered, you didn't have to. Yes, I cut in calmly, though my heart was pounding so loudly I could feel it in my throat. I did. I bent down and took the cloth from her shaking hand, pressing it gently to her bleeding knee. Her breath hitched in shock. No one in this house expected me to kneel for anyone. You are staff here, I told her quietly. From tonight, you and your daughter are under my personal protection. No one touches you, no one threatens you, not while you are in my house. Leah looked from her mother to me, confusion and fierce loyalty fighting in her eyes. Then slowly, she wrapped her small fingers around mine where I held the cloth to Anna's knee. Promise, she asked. There are promises in my world we never say out loud. Oaths that once spoken cannot be broken without bleeding for them. I felt the weight of that word as if it were a gun in my hand. I promise, I said. Behind me, someone started clapping. It was slow, deliberate. I didn't have to turn to know who it was. My father's oldest associate, Don Carlo, stood near the bar, hands coming together in careful, sarcastic applause. Bravo, ragazzo, he said. You just broke an alliance in front of half the city for a maid and her child. He lifted his glass toward me. I hope, he added, his smile thin and poisonous, your father is as impressed as I am. That night after the last guest disappeared and the chandeliers went dark one by one, I sat alone in my office, staring at the city lights beyond the tall windows. The house was finally quiet. Somewhere down the hall, Anna and Leah slept in the room I'd ordered prepared for them, guarded by two of my best men. My phone buzzed on the desk. I didn't need to check the screen to know who it was. Only one man called me at this hour without fear. I answered. Pronto. My father's voice was calm, too calm. Matteo. Papa. I just spoke with Valeria's father, he said. He tells me you humiliated his daughter, broke your engagement, chose a servant over your own blood. Is that true? I swallowed. I chose my house, my rules. On the other end, I heard the faint clink of ice in a glass. When he spoke again, his tone was colder than I'd ever heard it. Tomorrow morning, he said, that Maid and her brat are gone from your house. You send them away however you like and you call Valeria to apologize, or you are no longer my heir, no ports, no support, no family. He paused. Decide what you love more, figlio mio, he finished quietly, your throne or your conscience. The line clicked dead, and I was left alone in the dark, staring at my own reflection in the glass, realizing that saving one child might cost me everything I had ever bled for. By the way, if you're enjoying this video and want to see more exclusive content, don't forget to check out my Patreon. There's members-only content waiting for you over there, and your support really helps me keep making more videos. The link is in the description. The city looked different in the hours before dawn. From my office window, the lights were softer, the streets almost gentle. You could almost believe it was a normal place where men went to work, came home, kissed their children, and slept without a gun under the pillow. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, white shirt open at the collar, tattoos peeking through, jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. Behind my own face, I could almost see my father's, overlapping like a ghost. Tomorrow morning, he had said. A part of me wanted to obey, not for fear. Fear and I were old friends, but for habit, for the years of training that had taught me one simple law: family first, questions later. I remembered being 10 years old, watching my father throw a waiter down a flight of stairs because the man had spilled wine on his suit. My mother had tried to stop him, grabbing his arm, eyes wide with horror. Enzo, basta, she had cried, he's just a boy. My father had turned, eyes burning. In this house, he had shouted, no one questions me, not even you. Later that night, bruises blooming on her wrists, my mother had knelt by my bed and whispered, promise me, Matteo, promise me you will be a different kind of man. I had promised. Then I had grown up and learned how easily a promise can drown in blood and money and silence. There in my office with my father's threat still echoing in my ear, I realized I had spent my whole life becoming exactly the man she'd begged me not to be, until a little girl with chocolate on her cheek pointed her finger at me and asked why I was doing nothing. I pushed away from the desk, grabbed my jacket and walked down the hall. Two of my men stood outside the guest room I'd given Anna and Leah. Both straightened when they saw me. One of them, Marco, looked nervous. Any trouble? I asked. He shook his head. The kid cried for a while, boss, then she slept. The mother hasn't closed her eyes once. I nodded and opened the door. The room was dim, lit only by a small lamp near the bed. Leah slept curled up under the blanket, thumb near her mouth, teddy bear crushed against her chest. The ferocious little warrior from the ballroom was gone. In her place was just a child, exhausted from carrying more bravery than her body was built for. Anna sat in a chair by the window, arms wrapped around herself. She shot up when she saw me, fear flashing across her face before she pushed it down. Signore, she whispered, is something wrong? I closed the door behind me. Yes, I said honestly, everything is wrong. She flinched, shoulders tightening, as if waiting for a blow. My father called, I continued. He wants you gone by morning. If I don't send you away, he cuts me off. No more support, no more protection. Anna's eyes filled with tears she fought not to spill. She looked at her daughter, then back at me. Then send us away, she said quietly. Please, I don't want trouble for you. We will disappear. I will find another job, anywhere. Anywhere, I repeated, almost laughing. You think you can just leave, after tonight, after Valeria? I shook my head. You are not safe out there, not now, not with my name attached to your face. Her lips trembled. Then what choice do we have? I hesitated, then told her the truth I had been avoiding, the one that made my father's order feel even more like a curse. We met once before, I said softly. You and I, you just didn't know it. Her brows knit together. No, signore, Your husband, I cut in, voice rough. 3 years ago, correct, he worked at the old docks, in the warehouse near Pier 12. The blood drained from her face. She nodded slowly. Yes. My chest tightened. There was a shipment that went wrong. A rival crew tried to take it. Shots were fired. I swallowed hard. An innocent man died that night. A worker. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Anna's hand flew to her mouth. A choked sound escaped her throat. No, she whispered. No, no. I didn't pull the trigger, I said, but my men did on my orders. I gave the command that started that war. When they told me a civilian was caught in the crossfire, I sent money anonymously, a useless gesture. I told myself that was enough. Her knees buckled. She grabbed the back of the chair. That man, she said, voice fracturing, was my husband. The words hung between us like smoke. I had spent my life watching men beg for mercy, for money, for their lives. I had seen hatred in 1,000 faces, but nothing hit me like the look Anna was giving me now. Pain, rage, disbelief, the weight of every night she'd told her daughter, Papa is in heaven, without knowing whose hands had pushed him there. I should have never come to this house, she whispered. I thought if I worked here I could keep Leah safe. I thought a powerful man would scare the wolves away. I didn't know you were the one who sent them. I had no defense, no excuse worth speaking. You have every right to hate me, I said. If you want to spit in my face, do it. If you want to leave, I will give you enough money to vanish. Change your names, start again. I looked at Leah, sleeping, breathing softly. But if you stay, I went on, voice steadying, I swear to you on my mother's grave, no one will ever touch your daughter. Not my father, not Valeria, not anyone in this city. I cannot change what I did to your husband, but I can decide who I am from this moment on. Anna's tears finally spilled over. She sank slowly into the chair, shaking her head, torn between fury and the desperate instinct to protect the only thing she had left. You would start a war for us, she asked, barely audible. I thought of my father's voice, decide what you love more. Yes, I said, because if I throw you out to keep my crown, then my father is right. I am not a man, I'm just his echo. The door knock came sharp and urgent. Boss, Marco called, we've got cars at the gate, Valeria's people, they say they're here to pick up what belongs to her. Anna's head snapped up, panic flooded her face. Leah shifted in her sleep, sensing the tension. I stepped to the door, cracked it open. How many? 3 cars, Marco said, 5, 6 men each, armed. They're asking for the maid and the kid, say they're taking them to make things right. My anger, cold and clean, settled into place. Wake Luca, I ordered. Full security on the grounds. No one enters this house without my permission. If they push, we push harder, but no one fires unless I say so, understood. Marco nodded and ran. I turned back to Anna. She was already on her feet, clutching Leah's teddy bear, eyes wild. They're here for her, she whispered. They'll hurt her, please, you have to let us go through the back. You are not going anywhere, I said firmly. You step outside this house and you're dead before you reach the corner. Here at least I can fight for you. She opened her mouth to protest. I shook my head. Lock the door when I leave, I told her. Do not open it for anyone but me or Marco, no matter what you hear. Capito. Her chin trembled, but she nodded. Capito. As I walked down the hallway, adrenaline burning through my veins, I realized something strange. For the first time in years, I was not thinking about money or territory or reputation. I was thinking about the promise I had made to a child in a ballroom full of enemies. By the time I reached the front hall, my men were already in position. Some at the windows, some by the doors, others hidden in the shadows, weapons tucked out of sight but ready. Over the intercom camera, I saw Valeria's men at the gate. Hard faces, restless hands, the false confidence of those who believe they have permission to do anything. I pushed the button. Open the gate, I said. Boss, Luca started. Open it, but keep the doors locked until I say. The guards obeyed. The cars rolled up the long driveway, tires whispering over the stone. Headlights washed over the front steps, then died one by one. The men climbed out slowly, adjusting jackets that hid guns, glancing at the tall windows where they knew my people watched. The leader, a thick-necked man named Rocco, stepped forward. We had drunk together once, laughed over someone else's pain. Now his eyes held no warmth. He stopped a few meters from the door when I opened it and stepped out alone. "Matteo," he called, spreading his hands like we were old friends. "We come in peace." "No one like you ever comes in peace at this hour," I said. He smirked. "Valeria is upset. You embarrassed her. You broke your promise. She asked us to collect something small, a maid and her child, a message." He shrugged. "Return them quietly and we forget this little misunderstanding." My men shifted behind the glass, tension like a storm pressing on the air. "She is not an object," I replied, "and the child is under my protection." Rocco's smile thinned. "Your father doesn't agree." "I'm not my father," I shot back. He studied me, really studied me, for the first time that night. Maybe he saw something there that hadn't been there before. Maybe he just saw an opportunity. "You are choosing a dangerous hill to die on," he said. "For what? A servant, a bastard child." My vision narrowed. For a second I could see myself closing the distance, planting a bullet between his eyes, letting his blood stain the stones. It would be easy, it would send a message, it would start a war. Instead, I stepped closer until we were almost chest to chest. I dropped my voice, letting only him hear. "You go back to Valeria," I murmured, "and you tell her this, the old rules die tonight. No one lays a hand on a child in my city again, not hers, not mine, not anyone's. You touch them and I burn everything you love to the ground." His jaw tightened. "You talk like you own the whole city." "I talk like I intend to." He searched my face, trying to decide if I was bluffing. I didn't blink. Behind him, one of his men shifted impatiently. "Boss, we didn't come here to talk, we came to take." He didn't finish. From above, in the second-floor window, Leah's small face appeared, pressed to the glass. She must have slipped past Anna when she heard the cars. Her hair was messy, eyes wide. Even from a distance, I saw the recognition in Rocco's man's gaze when he spotted her. "There," the man hissed, starting forward. "The kid." My hand was at Rocco's throat before he could blink. I slammed him back against the nearest pillar, one arm across his chest, the other gripping his jaw so hard his teeth ground together. Every gun in the driveway lifted. Every gun inside my house did the same. "Tell him to stand down," I said coldly, nodding toward the man who had moved toward the stairs. "Right now, or no one leaves this place alive." Rocco struggled for breath, fingers clawing at my sleeve. His eyes flicked to the second-floor window, then back to mine. Whatever he saw there convinced him. He lifted his hand, fingers shaking. "Basta," he choked. "Everyone down now." The weapons lowered a fraction, mine did not. I held his gaze until he stopped resisting and just stared at me, suddenly understanding that this was not a negotiation about a maid anymore. This was about the kind of man I had decided to become, and how far I was willing to go to defend that decision. "You tell Valeria," I said softly, my voice lethal calm, "that if she wants a war, she can come herself, but she will not touch that child. She will not take one more thing from a woman who has already lost everything to our sins." I let him go. He stumbled, coughing, pride wounded more than his throat. "This isn't over, Romano," he spat. "No," I agreed, "it's just beginning." They left without Leah. Tires squealed on the stone as the cars reversed down the driveway. My men stayed at their positions until the last set of taillights disappeared through the gate. Inside, the house slowly started to breathe again. I went back upstairs. Leah met me halfway, barefoot on the stairs, hair sticking up, teddy bear dragging behind her. "Are they gone?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She studied my face with that same unafraid intensity she had shown in the ballroom. Then, without warning, she wrapped her arms around my waist and pressed her cheek to my shirt. "Thank you," she murmured. It was such a simple thing, a child's gratitude, but it hit me harder than any toast, any promise of loyalty, any fear in a rival's eyes. For the first time in years, someone was holding me without wanting something in return. Anna appeared at the top of the stairs, relief and exhaustion flooding her features when she saw her daughter safe. She met my eyes, and for a moment I thought she might turn away. Instead, she walked down slowly. "I still hate what you did," she said quietly, "to my husband, to so many others." "I know," I replied, "I hate it too. But tonight," she continued, voice trembling, "you stood in front of the guns for her." She looked at Leah, then back at me. "I don't know what to do with that." "You don't owe me forgiveness," I said. "Not now, maybe not ever. All I ask is that you let me try to be better than the man who took him from you." She searched my face for a long moment, like she was looking for the lie. Finally, she nodded once. "We will stay," she said, "for now, not because I trust you, but because she does." Leah looked up at us, confused. "I like him," she said simply. "He's scary to everyone else, but not to me." Out of the mouths of children, my mother used to say. That afternoon, my father came in person. He stood in my office, hands behind his back, eyes hard as stone. Men who terrified judges and police officers waited in the hall like schoolboys outside the principal's door. "You turned away Valeria's men," he said without greeting. "You refused my order. You put a maid under your personal protection in front of the entire city." "I did," I answered. He studied me, nostrils flaring. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've weakened us. You've insulted allies, all for what? For some ghost of your mother in your head." Anger flared in my chest. Maybe if you had listened to that ghost, we wouldn't be having this conversation. His hand flew so fast I barely saw it. The slap cracked across my face, bright and sharp. For a second the room spun. I did not move, I did not raise a hand to him. I took the hit the way I had taken every lesson from him, as something that would scar but not break me. "You forget yourself," he hissed. "No," I said, tasting blood on my lip. "For the first time I remember exactly who I am." I stepped closer. "I am the boy who watched you let men hurt my mother and did nothing. I am the man who gave the order that killed an innocent worker and told himself money could wash the blood away. And I am done being both those things." His eyes flashed. "You think kindness will keep you alive in this world?" "I think cruelty already killed everything that mattered," I shot back. "You asked me to choose, Papa, my throne or my conscience. I choose neither, I choose my soul." He stared at me, chest rising and falling. For a moment I thought he might reach for the gun tucked at his back. Instead, he straightened his cuffs, jaw clenched. "Very well," he said slowly. "From this day on you are on your own. No port, no judges, no protection. Build your own kingdom if you can, but do not come to me when it burns." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You are making a mistake," he said without looking back. "One day that girl will grow up and forget what you did for her. The world will not." "Maybe," I answered, "but when that day comes I will be able to look at myself in the mirror. That's more than you can say." He left without another word. In the months that followed, everything changed. We lost contracts, friends turned into neutral parties. Some of my own men left, afraid of standing with a boss who put children off limits in a business built on sacrifice. Valeria married into another family, their union announced in every newspaper like a threat written in gold ink. And yet, something unexpected happened. The ones who stayed weren't there because of fear or money alone. They were there because in their quiet, private lives they had children too, wives, sisters, mothers they had failed to protect. My new rule, no kids, no civilians, was a risk, but it was also a promise they could believe in. The city watched. At first they waited for me to fall. Then they started sending the kind of business that required a man with limits, not without them. The ones who wanted pure bloodshed went elsewhere. The ones who understood that power without lines is just chaos came to my door. One night, almost a year after the ballroom, I found Leah in the library, lying on her stomach on the carpet, tongue between her teeth, struggling with a pencil. Anna was dusting the shelves nearby, humming softly. Leah looked up when I walked in, her face lit up. "Matteo," she yelled, waving her paper. "Look, I wrote something." I sat beside her on the floor, my white shirt wrinkling against the rough carpet. The paper showed uneven letters, some backward, some too big. "Lia," it read, then under it shakier, slightly smudged, "Matto." "You wrote my name," I said. She nodded proudly. "Mama says names are powerful, so I wanted to give you yours back." The words hit deeper than she could possibly understand. For years my name had meant fear, debt, violence whispered in dark rooms. Now in the slow, clumsy writing of a child it meant something else. Protection, A promise kept. Anna watched us, a small, reluctant smile tugging at her lips. The hatred in her eyes had softened into something more complicated. Caution, yes, but also a kind of fragile faith. I kept thinking that day was the worst mistake of my life, I said quietly, looking at Leah, letting you shout at me in front of everyone. She frowned. Why, you were wrong, someone had to tell you. I laughed, the sound surprising even to my own ears. Exactly. She crawled into my lap without asking, settled her head against my chest, and closed her eyes, trusting that the heartbeat under her ear would not suddenly turn on her. As I wrapped my arms around this small, stubborn child, I realized what had truly changed. Power had always made people fear me. Money had always made them obey. But that night in the ballroom, when a little girl pointed her finger at my chest and asked why I was letting her mother cry, I had been given something I didn't know I wanted. A chance to choose who I was, not who they said I had to be. I lost ports, I lost alliances, I lost my father. But I gained something that no one in my world talks about at those glittering tables. The quiet, steady strength that comes from standing between the innocent and the darkness, and refusing to move. The night Leah fell asleep in my arms in that library, surrounded by silent books and louder memories, I finally understood what my mother had asked me all those years ago. Be a different kind of man. I wasn't there yet. I had more sins than I could ever count, more ghosts than I could ever name. But for the first time, the path in front of me felt like mine. Not my father's, not the Mafia's. Mine. And it had started with 4 terrifying words from a fearless little girl. You can't boss my mom. Hey guys, if you're enjoying my videos and want to see more exclusive content, I've got some extra stuff waiting for you over on Patreon. YouTube is where I share the main content, but Patreon is where I share some members-only videos and bonus content. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, come join me on Patreon. The link is in the description. Hope to see you there.